Happy Friday once again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Book Daily. My name is Rob, and I am an alcoholic, and it's just about lunchtime as I'm posting this here, but I have a personal story to share, and I want to thank Rikki from Utah for sharing this. This is a beautiful story, and a very honest and vulnerable story. But there is so much in this. I just read through it and wow. And there's a lot that I could relate to that Rikki's gone through. And again, Rikki, thank you so much. Can't wait to talk about it. But here is Rikki's story. Hey, Rob. Thanks for doing your podcast. I found it a couple months ago on Spotify, and I listen to it every morning now. My name is Rikki. I'm 30 years old, and I live in Utah. I have 4 months sober from drugs and alcohol now, but my addictions cost me most of my 20s. Looking back, I can see that I had addictive tendencies from a very early age. I've always felt uncomfortable with myself and anxious about basically everything. Thinking poorly about myself and isolating from others became a habit that I learned a long time ago, and I carried it for most of my life. Drinking and drugging only made it worse. I was in my early 20s when I began using drugs and alcohol. Since I lived away from my family, I constantly found reasons to drink, drug, and smoke. I thought it was cool. It made me feel better about myself. Drugs were always involved, like an appetizer to drinking. My drinking became really aggressive after I turned 26. I didn't like beer much. I just liked the feeling alcohol gave me. I drank vodka all day, every day for a few years. Feeling sick and hungover all the time became normal. Somehow I managed to keep my job and barely show up for my responsibilities, but I was only functioning because I was afraid of becoming homeless and losing my girlfriend. My standard of living became really low. On the inside, I was miserable because I kept trying and failing to stop drinking. It put me in terrible situations with other people who were also drinking and using. Detox and treatment helped a little, but I always went back because I was terrified of being sober and facing myself, a person that I didn't know and didn't want to know. As the years passed, I became more addicted and more disordered. I started living with a partner who was always supportive and never forceful about me getting sober. I felt terrible that I couldn't get sober. I beat myself up constantly, and it always led to harder relapses. I feel guilty saying this, but even though I wasn't a great partner to her, she was a great partner to me. My addictions caused the people around me a lot of pain. I became selfish. I lied often to cover up the version of myself I didn't want people to see. I didn't like who I was, and I didn't want others to see why. I had bad habits in every area of life. I was compulsive, selfish, dishonest. I even stole. But I still wanted to preserve the reputation of being a good guy. On the inside, I felt terrible about myself. It all came to a head last year when my girlfriend exposed my secrets and kicked me out. I was devastated. I moved in with my parents and cried every day. My addictions had cost me years of my life, my health, and finally, the person who meant the most to me. A few weeks later, I wandered into AA, and I realized that my girlfriend had actually done me a favor. The day she kicked me out became my sobriety date. She shook me hard enough to get me to finally change. My emotional desperation led me to AA, where I began to understand why I had been drinking and using. I never liked myself. I never believed in myself. I lived with constant negative self-talk. Now, because of the 12 steps, I'm learning to live a life that I can be proud of. One that makes me feel better now about who I am. It took time to accept that I can't change the past or fix everything that I broke. But I started making amends, forgiving myself, and rewriting my story. I'm still early in recovery, and I'm still working the steps. And one of the hardest parts of being sober is feeling my emotions. Sometimes they hit hard. But today, I can cope with them because I've learned how to express myself without alcohol. I'm grateful to be sober because I know today I am going to live, not die. My inner world is more peaceful. I've repaired some relationships. I'm getting to know myself, and I have found real friends in AA. I'm learning that life, my higher power, is taking better care of me than I ever could on my own. I hope someone can learn from my story. Don't hate yourself. You are a person who has carried a lot, but you don't have to carry it alone. You don't have to drink or use. You can learn to love and forgive yourself. You can rewrite your story. Love, Rikki from Utah. Wow. Great stuff, Rikki. First of all, congratulations on 4 months of sobriety. Wow. That's amazing, man. That is a miracle. And I'm so grateful that you shared your story. I mean, as I was reading this, I'm like, yeah, I've been through that. Yes, I know the exact thing he's going through. And I'm sure that other people that are hearing this, who knows where, have felt exactly what you're describing. So thank you, man, for having the courage to be honest. Going back right through here, I'm just going to scroll back up to the top of your email here. Man, this line here, I've always felt uncomfortable with myself and anxious about basically everything. I've been there. And then those habits of isolating, I get it. When you first turn alcohol, man, it felt great at first, right? I thought it was cool. It made me feel better about myself. And it sounds like you were a functioning alcoholic for a while. It says here, somehow I managed to keep my job and barely show up for my responsibilities. But I was only functioning because I was afraid of becoming homeless and losing my girlfriend. My standard of living became really low. And buddy, I can feel this line here. On the inside, I was miserable because I kept trying and failing to stop drinking. That's right there leading you to step one, right? Where you keep trying and trying and trying and you can't seem to stop. I've been there, man. Many of us have been there. I mean, that's why we're alcoholics, right? It's the most natural desire for an alcoholic to want to drink. As the years passed, I became more addicted and more disordered. I started living with a partner who has always been supportive and never forceful about me getting sober. I felt terrible that I couldn't get sober and beat myself up constantly, and it always led to harder relapses. Man, I've been there. I remember when I would drink, I would make these selfish decisions. And then when I would get sober, I would feel so guilty and shameful for doing some of those horrible things and hurting the people that I love, that I would drink to kind of cover up the guilt. It led to harder relapses. I know exactly what you're talking about. I feel guilty saying this, but even though I wasn't a great partner to her, she was a great partner to me. Man, that makes me think of Lois and her partnership with Bill. And that makes me think of my wife. I think beside every good man is a greater woman. I really feel that. And I know what you're talking about. And I feel your pain because it sounds like eventually she caught you on all your lies, just like my wife caught me on all my lies. She exposed my secrets, and although she didn't kick me out, she was going to leave, and she was going to take my newborn daughter and my 2-year-old son with her. So I get it. That's what it takes sometimes to shake things up for us, right? To where we finally realize the destruction that the tornado of our alcoholism has caused. And it sounds like that was your bottom, right? Maybe step one for you. It says right here, my addictions had cost me years of my life, my health, and finally the person who meant the most to me. That sounds like bottom to me, man. A few weeks later, I wandered in AA and realized that my girlfriend had actually done me a favor. She shook me hard enough to finally change. My emotional desperation led me to AA, where I began to understand why I'd been drinking and using. I never liked myself. You betcha, man. That's one thing that I've learned from the steps is we learn a lot about the root causes of why we do the things we do. See, the fellowship's great. And I definitely hear my higher power through what people say and share. But I also had to work with a sponsor who could take me through the steps and help me to learn, turn my will over to the higher power of my understanding. Whatever that looks like for me, whatever it looks like for you. And then taking care of that inventory. Really trying to discover the root causes of why we do the things we do. Now, because of the 12 steps, I'm learning to live a life I can be proud of. One that makes me feel better about who I am. You betcha. You were talking about how you couldn't stand yourself, but the 12 steps are just these vehicles for us to live a life of integrity today, right? So that way, when we do look in the mirror, we don't hate the person we see. Ah, man, I love that. He says, I'm still early in recovery and I'm still working the steps. One of the hardest parts of being sober is feeling my emotions. Okay, I hope you don't mind this. I heard this acronym for sober, right? Son of a bitch, everything's real. Yeah, sometimes, and we don't have the alcohol to numb it, right? But I promise you, the more work you put in doing the steps and the inventory and making the amends and just time itself, picking up one board at a time in reconstructing after the tornado has hit, I promise you, you'll see progress. And that self-hatred, buddy, that sometimes, if that wave ever comes back, which it might, it certainly had for me, just know you're doing everything you possibly can right here and right now to make things right. I wrestled with self-hatred a lot too. And I'll never forget, somebody had once told me, he said, Rob, you're a dad, right? I said, yes, sir. And at the time, my son was maybe 3. He said, how would you feel being your son's father if you saw your son sitting on the edge of his bed crying? You walk in and you ask him what's the matter. And he says, I hate who I am. I hate me. There's something wrong with me. And he looked me in the eye and said, how would that make you feel as his father, Rob? And I said, horrible. I mean, that's my son. There's nothing he could do that would make me love him any less. And he smiled and he said, how much more does your Heavenly Father love you? And buddy, that hit me hard. Self-hatred, my friend, is a waste of time. And when you feel that way, what I recommend is helping somebody else, getting outside of yourself, because pride is a two-way street. It can be positive, like I'm better than everyone, or it can be negative, like I'm the worst. I'm worse than everyone. And either way, we're being self-consumed, right? And we're of no use to anybody else. But here's the interesting thing. When we actually work with others, somehow it does help us as a byproduct, not as the motivation to help others, but as a byproduct in helping others. Great stuff. And he says, I'm grateful to be sober today because I know that I'm going to live, not die. My inner world is more peaceful. I've repaired some relationships and I'm getting to know myself, and I've found real friends in AA. Beautifully said. Best friends I've ever had are my AA buddies. They're there through thick and thin, and they're people I can be real with. I hope that someone can learn from my story. Don't hate yourself. You're a person who's carried a lot, but you don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to drink or use. You can learn to love and forgive yourself and rewrite your story. Beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. So all I can say, man, is that those 5 things, right? That my sponsor taught me. Pray, read the big book, check out a meeting, call your sponsor, and help another drunk. If I do those 5 things, I might have a nice daily reprieve, contingent upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition. So dude, stay close to the program, my friend. Keep working those steps. Don't give up, and you are doing a lot better than you think you are. I could not agree with you more, Rikki, for everything. And help others when you can, man. You are building a new life, and you're exactly right. I think your best chapters are yet to come, my friend. And just like you said, we can learn to love ourselves in this program. And if we can love ourselves, we can certainly learn to love others as well. Beautiful stuff. But my friends, that's all we have time for today. Rikki, thank you again. I hope you know that you're a miracle, and that just like Rikki's 4 months of sobriety, that you are a living miracle. And that those who love you are very proud of you. And you're giving a great gift to everyone around you. And if you're not sober, maybe you're right in the middle of that pain right now that Rikki was talking about. Listen again for those similarities. And listen for those solutions, right? How Rikki's darkest moment has actually turned into one of the greatest things that's ever happened to him. Because it forced him to make a change. And now, on the other side of it, he's already experiencing that serenity. Those promises are coming true in his life. Beautiful stuff. But my friends, that's all we have time for today. Please know, as always, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, any other sect. I am just a joyful drunk in this lifeboat of recovery. Honored to be here today. And if we are given another set of 24 hours, my friends, I sincerely look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.